Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Megan, the Healing Foods Coach, and I'm so glad that you came to check out my video content. And if you have been here before, thank you for coming back. If you're new, thank you for taking time to watch these videos. I super appreciate all your support. So today's topic, and I know that this will obviously not affect everybody immediately, because I'm talking about how to have an enjoyable and thriving health through menopause. And obviously not everybody watching is in menopause. Many of you may be past that stage. There are probably even more of you who are years away from it. Or if you're a guy, you won't be going through it. And I hope that this will give you some knowledge so that you can be supportive or helpful to the women in your life who are going through this time of life. So, menopause, that time when we start to gradually stop having a cycle, we no longer have the ability to have children. Our hormone levels completely change because we don't need the same amount of progesterone and estrogen as we do on a monthly basis. We're not trying to grow a human. And therefore, because there is such a change in our hormones, we often, at this stage of life, can suffer with symptoms such as massive food cravings and binges, and therefore unwanted weight gain, especially around the abdominal area. We often have major mood swings, going from irritable, angry to sad and weepy. And it will feel like we feel like we're on a runaway roller coaster. And no doubt it is even scarier for the people around us who want to help and always perhaps feel like they're saying the wrong things at the wrong times. It is a time of life for us as females where, in a way, we're glad because if we've had children, we're past that stage. We're not necessarily wanting more children, but it is an end to a significant time of our life. For many, many years, we've either had children or at least had the ability to have children if we so desired. And now that comes to an end. And so I know there are many women who struggle with anxiety and depression, not only through this period, but also the lead up to it. Am I going to have to suffer with horrible migraines and night sweats and hot flushes? Am I going to have to suffer with weight gain and just not feeling like myself? Am I going to have to suffer with the brain fog that comes to many women when they go through this period of time? No, that is not inevitable. It does not have to go that way. I want to share with you, as I'm currently going through that phase of life myself, that in fact, you don't have to have a horrible experience as you go through menopause. You may, in fact, not even need to take any sort of hormone replacements or any type of therapies. And the only thing that you need to do, initially at least, is clean up your diet. Majority of us, as we head into this period of life, we have most likely spent a lifetime, therefore decades, eating the highly processed sugars and salts and seed oils and carby treats over a very long period of time, which causes, of course, inflammation, which causes brain fog, which can lead to unwanted weight gain. And that becomes even worse through menopause because there is such a drastic change in the hormones that we keep and that we use, that seems to make it even more exacerbated. And so, what does that mean? What am I trying to say? You might be asking yourself, so what does that mean, Megan? What do you want me to do? Well, I would suggest, and I would say this for anybody, for any sort of health, for any kind of health issue, you want to make sure you're eating the most healthy, nutritious, and healing diet you possibly can. Now, for some people, that will include a wide range of animal products, ranging from poultry to seafood with maybe some red meat and pork in between. That may include loads of dairy, that can include eggs, full-fat cheeses and yogurts, perhaps, if they tolerate it. It could also include some fruit, and it could include some vegetables if they are lower in carbohydrates and non-starchy. Why is that? Because those things cause inflammation in our bodies. When we eat those things, we are not helping ourselves. Okay, in spite of what we've been told, eating vast amounts of starchy carbohydrates, which are typically highly processed and refined in a factory. So whether it's pre-made bread or rolls, whether it's pre-made pasta, most ready meals or takeaway meals, whether it is frozen dinners, whether it is rich sauces, it could be ethnic foods, it could be the Mexican style foods, which, by the way, are delicious. However, they are also full of sauces that are high in sugars and seed oils and salt, because they're typically not made by yourselves. They're putting in boxes, they are put in jars, and they have to have a preserving shelf life. Anything that has a shelf life, you probably want to avoid eating for the most part, because any sort of nutritional value that might have been there has likely been lost through the manufacturing process. And that includes things that are high in seed oils, salt, especially. Now, sorry, let me just take a step back. I'm referring to the iodized salt, where all the electrolytes have been removed. So like table salt, which may have had iodine added, but this is a bleached version, and therefore of no benefit to us, and therefore is not healthy for us to consume. Himalayan like sea salt, Redmond salt, these are good quality salts from natural sources with the electrolytes included. Those are salts that we should be consuming, that our bodies actually require. As a side note, we do actually need to get a certain amount of salt in our diets every single day for optimum health and functioning. Okay, so we can't go without salt completely. We do need some, but it must be a good quality sea or rock salt, as opposed to the refined, the highly processed and iodized table salt. That stuff is definitely not good. And that is a lot of what goes into packaged foods for that salty, flavory taste. So potato chips, whether it's corn chips, potato chips, Cheeto puffs, whatever you want to call them, that's the sort of salt that goes in there. Okay, and that is definitely not good for us. So when we are approaching menopause, we already have a major shift in our hormones. Can't avoid it. That's part of the cycle of life for females, is that we have our reproductive years and then those will come to an end. So our hormones are going to change. That is supposed to happen. However, the weight gain, the mood swings, the emotional distress, the increased anxiety and depression, the night sweats and heart, the palpitations, all of those things are things that we can probably, unless you have some other underlying issue, and I would put to you that perhaps changing your diet will help improve or eliminate these symptoms. But these are not symptoms that we should have to worry about having. These added symptoms are a result of hormonal dysfunction or imbalances. Often it's because our thyroids start to slow down. And that could be, in many cases, it's because we are iodine deficient. We have built up a lifetime of not getting enough iodine. And slowly, as we get older, our thyroid seems to work less optimally. If we are also consuming a diet that is full of highly processed carbohydrates, sugary, salty, starchy, or any combination thereof, we are putting inflammatory foods into our bodies, and that is not going to help us. If you match that stuff up with not getting enough iodine to keep the thyroid functioning, then you're going to start to find, because the thyroid is is sort of the general manager of our hormones, but specifically, in this case, referring to the reproductive sex hormones. Okay, there are other hormones in the body, those are driven by other organs, but the hormones that allow us to have good metabolism, good digestion and metabolism, driven by the thyroid. The hormones that determine how long our cycles will last, how much estrogen and progesterone we produce, and how much is released, and how painful or, easy our cycles are, that is all driven by the thyroid. So the thyroid is incredibly important. It requires iodine. We have to get enough in our bodies for that to be the case. And if we do that, if we allow ourselves to make sure that our thyroid is functioning as optimally as possible, menopause does not have to be this dreaded period of life. Think of it as, maybe the joy you felt when you realized, if you've had children, that your children are now grown and they're out on their own and they're doing well, they're working, they're living life, they're doing the grown-up things. And though it's a little sad because you maybe not need it as much as when they were small children, but now you're not needed as much now that they're no longer small children. And so being able to phase through into menopause without all these other horrible symptoms is absolutely possible. When I first started, for me, on a carnivore diet 4 years ago, I wasn't yet in that menopause phase. I had hypothyroidism. I was 100 pounds overweight. I had horrible fibromyalgia, awful brain fog, terrible IBS. My cycles were horribly painful and awful, and I dreaded them every single month. And of course, until I started changing my diet, I was consuming nothing, almost nothing, except for carbohydrates, and most of them were highly processed at that time. Breads, rolls, desserts, cakes, ice cream, which is highly processed and a carb. Okay. I was doing all of those things, adding inflammation to my body because those are inflammatory foods, adding inflammation to my body, making all my symptoms worse. And so the first thing I had to do was change my diet. And one of the first things I noticed when I headed on this journey was that I noticed my brain fog started to lift, my joints started to ache a bit less, my inflammation was coming down. Not only that, I started to have much better response. I was able to better digest the food I did eat and metabolize it, and therefore get rid of whatever my body didn't need. I used to have such horrible, sorry, it's a bit of a TMI, but I had such horrible constipation. I could go weeks without a single bowel movement, and I was in agony. But when I got all the garbage out and I started to cut out and reduce the inflammation that it was causing, it helped upregulate my thyroid. Yes, definitely true. I was able to come off my thyroid medication eventually. But more than that, I noticed that I wasn't having digestive upset. I was actually digesting, and not only that, metabolizing and utilizing the nutrients that I was consuming, as opposed to simply storing all the garbage, all the processed inflammatory crap as body fat. So that was a huge difference. And I point that out because, as I mentioned earlier, the thyroid is a big driver of not only metabolism, but of our sex hormones, our ovaries, our uterus, and of course, our cycles for women. There are so many women out in this space who, because of the way they were eating, because of their hormone imbalances or dysregulations, lost their cycles completely. But after changing their diets, getting all the inflammatory, horrible things out of their diet, healing themselves through diet, their cycles came back. I know there's Rebecca Heichman, who had a number of autoimmune conditions. Wasn't sure she could have children. She now has a beautiful son. Sarah Kleiner, she and her husband had hoped to have another child at one point, but she had to heal her hormones. And now she has a teenage daughter, and she has a newborn, a baby as well. And that was something she wasn't sure would happen. I think of Dr. Barry's wife, Nisha, who had Hashimoto's, had a difficult time with getting pregnant. And yet now that she's healing and she's on an amazing health journey in her own life, they've had two beautiful children. And so things can happen simply by changing our diets, just by cleaning up our diets. Now, I never had the issue of my cycle going away. But when I had my cycles, they were horrible, painful, and I was an emotional basket case. Didn't help the fact, like I've said, it did not help the fact that I would load up on sugary garbage during that 7 to 10 day period, because that would just keep me inflamed and it would make the emotional ups and downs even worse. So what do we do about that? How do we enjoy the fact that this phase of life is finishing? We're entering a phase now where we don't have to worry every month. We don't have to think about it every month. We can go on holiday and not think, oh, am I going to get it? Is it going to happen? Not a problem, which is great. Okay. I used to be filled with dread at entering menopause because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have all these awful symptoms and it could last for a couple of years. Like, I don't want to go through this. And you know what? As soon as I started getting all of the inflammatory processed crap out of my diet, like I said, not only did my brain fog start to lift and my chronic inflammation and pain in my joints start to ease off, not only did my IBS start to heal and my gut start to improve as far as digestion, and not only that, my metabolism, but what I noticed was I wasn't going through these massive mood swings. I wasn't going from having moments where I felt cold constantly to moments where I thought I was going to sweat to death. Now, I was having a few of those issues even before I was in menopause. And I think a big part of that was because my underactive thyroid, one of the common symptoms that happens with that is we are unable to regulate our body temperature. And that, of course, can get worse if it carries on through the menopause period. I've not had a single, so since I've been on this diet for 4 years, I do not struggle with being able to control my body temperature. I have not had a single hot flush. I've not had a single night sweat. I've not had massive carb cravings or binges, luckily. And I've not seen my weight balloon as many women experience when they start to go through menopause, because some of that weight gets held on based on what our hormones are doing. So weight gain is often hormonally driven. And so I've been lucky that way. I feel like I'm sailing through this phase. Now, I understand that some people may still have some issues, even if they change their diet. But I would put to you, if we get out the inflammatory garbage junk that is not really meant to be eaten in the first place, we can only but improve our overall health. And I think it is absolutely possible for every female who struggles with, or who is potentially struggling at the thought of entering menopause or worried about what might happen. I think we can prevent so many of these symptoms that we just accept as it's inevitable. It does not have to be inevitable at all. Okay, at all. And so I would suggest, as I say, and this is something that everyone should do, I think, anyways, but let's, first of all, get rid of all the sugar. Cut out the sugar completely. Get rid of it. Especially, yes, the refined, highly processed stuff. Get rid of it. If it's added in, don't eat it. Get rid of anything that's full of seed oils. Basically, you should cut out everything that's made in a factory. Don't eat it, because it's full of preservatives and chemicals that will not help you. Cut out the crap. From there, out of the carbohydrates that occur in nature on their own, like I'm talking grains and cereals and vegetables and fruits, start to cut those out. I think that if we were to do that, get all of the processed factory made stuff out of your diet. It is not technical. It really isn't food. It's junk. It's a slow release of poison into your body. It will cause you inflammation. It will cause you to have imbalanced hormones and dysregulation, and you will end up with more problems than are worth the effort of eating it. Even if you don't have it happen right away, it builds up over time. So get that stuff out. Get it out completely. There's no value in consuming these things. The other thing I would suggest, and I would highly recommend as a female who is in menopause or entering menopause, make sure you get loads of saturated fat. That is so important. Why? Well, because we require saturated fat in order for our bodies to make enough cholesterol to then feed the hormones that are needed and make the hormones healthy. So basically, if we are not consuming enough saturated fat, we are unable to produce enough of the essential cholesterol that our body requires to then go on and make the hormones to support our systems, which means when we don't have enough of the hormones, say during menopause, that's when we can have struggles with things like night sweats, hot flushes, massive cravings, mood swings, weight gain. Those are all hormonally driven. So if we are not producing enough of the hormones because we are not getting in enough dietary cholesterol, it has a knock-on effect. So please make sure you get plenty of dietary fat. And when I say that, I mean saturated fat. So you can get that from, of course, any animal source. Red meat and lamb have more of it because they're fattier animals. But if you don't like those kinds of meat, you know what? Eat your chicken, eat your turkey, have your duck, but make sure you cook it or eat it with loads of butter. You can also cook with beef tallow or bacon grease or lard or ghee, which is a form of butter. And those all provide you with excellent sources of saturated fat. I would also say egg yolks. Well, eggs, if you are okay with eggs. Some of us don't do well with the whites, but we do really well with the yolks, and that's where the good stuff is. That's where you want to get all the good saturated fats from the egg is in the yolk. Okay. Also, of course, bacon and any cut of meat has some degree of saturated fat. It's just some are higher or richer in it than others. Get loads of dietary sources. Well, of course, what am I saying? Make sure to eat plenty of saturated fats because the cholesterol you'll get is what the body requires in order to produce enough hormones to keep you balanced and humming along so that you can get through menopause without all these awful side effects. They're not inevitable. They're only inevitable if we continue to eat the horrible crap that's out there. If we get rid of that stuff and we change our diets, we don't even have to worry about it. It will take care of itself. And I know I'm speaking as an N+1 example, but let me tell you, when I realized I was starting into menopause late last year, you know what? I wasn't even sure because I didn't have any of these so-called inevitable symptoms. And I ate plenty of butter. I ate plenty of fatty meat. I ate lots of egg yolks. I enjoy chicken breast, sometimes some sausage. Occasionally that becomes steak or burgers if we're out, whatever. But that's what I eat. And I have found absolutely no symptoms whatsoever that I was told were inevitable and unavoidable once you hit menopause. And they're not. They're absolutely not. So it is entirely possible to go through this phase with joy, with gratitude, with happiness, and enjoy life because we're not feeling miserable because of the symptoms, because we've cut all the crap out that seems to cause them in the first place. They are a result of inflammation, of which brings cortisol levels up, which, as I've said in other videos, forces the body to store fat. If you're constantly in a state of stress, you will not be able to get rid of body fat, no matter what you do. It will stay there. So it doesn't matter if you walk 10 miles a day, if you're in a constant state of stress and you're eating garbage, that weight, especially the weight around the belly, which is where most women want to lose it from, will not shift. Okay, it will not. And if you do manage to, because you do extreme exercise or you drastically reduce your caloric intake, it will not last for long. It will come back very easily because you're in a state of stress and cortisol levels are way up here. And if we're constantly eating starchy, sugary, processed, refined, awful carbohydrates, our blood glucose levels are always here. The insulin level is way up here. And again, our body is going to hold on to its stored fat and not dump it, which is what we don't want, right? So cut that stuff out of your diet. Make sure you eat plenty of saturated fat from animals. Now, there are a couple of exceptions, or at least there's one exception that I'm aware of, which is an excellent source of saturated fats. It is not from an animal. However, it does have some carbohydrates, and that is avocado. If you can tolerate it, that is a great source of saturated fats and omegas. Okay, so it is quite good for you. And for people who want to do more low carb keto, it's an excellent choice. It's lower carb. It's not a starchy carb. Avocados are not starchy carbs, which is great. So it's not going to spike your insulin, but it does have carbohydrates, so it will raise it up somewhat. All right. And that is so if you're trying to figure out what things to eat to help increase your fats, have some avocado, have some eggs with the yolk. I enjoy some little chunks of butter throughout the day. That's not your thing. That's cool. But you can cook with lots of butter, eat fattier cuts of meat. Okay. And that will all help you get the necessary dietary cholesterol to then make the hormones that will keep you mentally and physically balanced in your body. And so you can absolutely have a very happy menopause. So for those of you who might be in that stage now of life, and you are starting to experience these awful symptoms, try these things that I've suggested. Cut out all the junk, cut out all the process. If it was made in a factory, don't eat it. If it contains seed oils, don't eat it. I would also suggest that the things that we consider natural, cereals, grains, most vegetables and fruit, cut those down. Ultimately, you want to get rid of grains and cereals because they are highly inflammatory to some degree in everyone. Some people just far more than others, and they're not going to help you, and they will spike your blood sugar. Okay, get rid of those. You want to try to narrow yourself down to non-starchy vegetables. If you still want to eat vegetables, keep them non-starchy, as low carb as you can. And for right now, cut out fruit as well. You may be able to reintroduce it later, but it will absolutely spike your blood sugar every time you eat it. And that, of course, reduces inflammation and an inflammatory response in the body. So do those things, and I think you'll find that your symptoms start to improve and should, in fact, completely go away if you stick with it. So I hope this is helpful. I hope this has been some good information. If you weren't aware of these things, I hope it does help you. And as I say, there are so many great women in the carnivore space who have been through the menopause. And because they followed a non-inflammatory, animal-based, higher fat diet, they did not have major issues. You can look at Dr. Lisa Wiedemann and Dr. Elizabeth Bright are two great examples of that. I'm not a doctor, but I'm going through this phase. And like I said to you, luckily, I'm not dealing with those horrible symptoms. So if you would like some more one-to-one coaching, if you want some more personal guidance to say, hey, but I also have this condition. Hey, but I'm also dealing with this. Can this help me as well? What do you think? What should I start with? If you want more of that, I offer coaching. And you can actually book now, hint, hint, at my website. And I would love to work with you and help you get through this phase of life or help you get prepared for when that phase of life comes to you. Get in touch. and we can do some work one-to-one. But I do hope this helps. Share this with whoever you think could benefit. If you're one of my great guys watching these videos, if you have a loved one who's going through menopause or about to, this may be helpful, and it might just give you a bit of a better understanding why she is feeling the way she is or acting the way she is. So hopefully that helps with a little bit more understanding, a little bit more patience, perhaps with love, and of course with kindness. You can suggest she may want to try some of these things to help ease her symptoms. Let me know how you get on. Thank you so much for your attention, and always, you guys are amazing, and I super, super appreciate your support. Let's get healing together. Okay, let's do it. Let's get rid of the poisons. Let's get rid of the crap in our diet. Let's get better. Let's get healthy. Let's thrive. That's what we're meant to do. All right. That's all for now. Appreciate all your time and watching this video to the end. I thought it would be a shorter video. It's not as short as I had thought, but I think it was an important one to get out there. So all the best, guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.